Hello and welcome to the Cards in Common How to Play video. We start the process with an unboxing, and then we're going to go through the basic mechanics and run you through everything you need to know to be able to play your own game. So, a box. Amazing. You open the box, then you have a booklet, which sometimes is under the plastic cards, and then the cards that come in these. This is when you buy it from Game Crafters. This is how it comes. They're all like in plastic bags. Though these cards need to be sorted. They need to be sorted so as to figure into two piles. They need to figure into a commoner card pile and oppressive forces pile. So I'm gonna go and do that, and I'll be right back. And here we are. So this is everything that was in the box. So you have the box, which you will not need. You have the booklet, that if this video is any good, you will not need. Well, you could use it if you get confused and stuff. And then you have commoner cards, which are the ones with the gray back, like so. And then the oppressive forces that come with 3 phases. Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3. So, to start a game, you place Phase 2 on top of Phase 3, and Phase 1 on top of Phase 2. And then this will give you a chronological move from easier opposition to stronger opposition. For pro players out there, players, people who want a challenge, take out a few cards. It'll just go faster. You'll make your way to the hard cards quicker. So to get a game started, we place the oppressive forces at the center of the table, and we distribute 4 cards from the commoner deck to each player. So in this hypothetical scenario, I'm going to distribute to 4 players. I changed my mind. 3 players. So these 3 players have 4 cards each. The player who starts is the one who is wearing the most color. In this case it will be me, because the other 2 are just chairs. So I will start first, but before I start, what needs to happen is that you draw an amount of cards from this deck that is equivalent to the amount of players minus 1. So if you are playing 2 players, you are to turn 1 of these around. If you are 3 players, like in this case, we turn 2 of these around. If we would be 4, we would turn around 3, and if we would be 5, we would turn around 4. Losing condition is more than 5 enclosures in this line here. So there could be a 5th one, and then the 6th, we are dead. Winning condition, no more. We have neutralized them all. In the oppressive forces deck, there are 2 types of cards. You have crises cards, which have gray frames, and enclosure cards that have black frames. Crises have an instantaneous negative effect. So once these cards turn around, a gray card is turned around, you read it, which is hard to do because we're not macro. Every player picks a random card from the hand of the player to their left and discards it. So this card reduces the amount of cards that players have in their hand. So this is a one-time thing. This is an effect that happens because police murder another black man. And so we lose a card from each of our hands, and once this is completed, it is discarded. So this effect is an instant card effect. These blacked frame cards are enclosures. These are our enemies. These are the monsters against which we are campaigning. So they will stay on the board. They will not finish until they are neutralized. So they also have effects that you can read, and they apply negative modifying conditions to the game. This one, having a gray frame, has an instantaneous effect. In this case, it is one player must choose to discard an action card. And this one has a orange frame, which is a permanent negative effect. So this effect will continuously influence the game until this card is discarded, neutralized. So that in this case is players are not allowed to play an action card until unless they have an idea resource in their hand, which is a form of limitation on freedom. So Dogma offers this limitation on gameplay, and this effect, only being allowed to play actions if you have an idea in your hands, will stop affecting players when this card is neutralized. So more on neutralizing cards later. So in our hands, player cards, we have 4 potential kinds of cards. We have lots of cards that are upside down, 2 of them right now. So we have white framed cards, which are our resources. This is our currency to be able to deploy any action or projects on our end. So for example, this card here offers us jutin, which is time. So time is a means, it's a wealth, a form of wealth. And so time offers us 1 green icon. We'll get back to these values and meaning in a second. This is a project card, purple framed. These are the main tools for our campaigning against enclosures. So in this case, l'Hôtel du Nord would add 1 red and 1 green to our, let's say, offensive capacity, and we require 1 green, 1 yellow, and 1 blue to be allowed to deploy this card. So in this case, we only have 1 green on the table. We do not have what we need to be able to deploy this card, so I would have to keep this in my hand. Similarly, these are pink framed cards. They are action cards. These have immediate positive effects on the gameplay. The final card type is an orange framed card, which are attitudes. Attitude cards have a modifying effect on the player's capacity to collaborate. So in this case, resignation makes it so that it's very difficult for me to renew my resources. This was my hand when I picked up, and it was my turn to start. So I would look at this, and I have an orange card in my hand, which means I immediately need to put that down. This immediately affects my capacity to collaborate. I will be resigned until I can get rid of this card. And let's say I begin. So I have a resource here. Each player is allowed to play 1 resource per turn. So resource. Time is now available. I tend to play it the other way so that other players can read it. You could read this chair, right? Yes. So time is now available as a resource for all players. Every player can mobilize time to be able to deploy their projects or their actions. So since this is the first turn, there are no resources around. I cannot pay for any of these 2 cards, therefore I cannot play. If I desire to, every player has a set aside pile. So for example, I could think that this card, it would only be good mid-game, which it is, strategy, tip. And so I could put it in my set aside pile, which is face down in my game. I could continue adding cards to this pile, but once I pick from it, I always have to pick the card that is on top. And so right now I'm going to leave this one here. This freed up a space in my hand, which means that by the end of my turn, when I say I'm done, it is now the player to my left's turn, I pick cards to be able to bring my hand back up to 4 cards. So if I wouldn't have done this, I would have picked only 2 cards. By doing that, now I picked 3 cards. 2 of them are resources, and in this case, the other one is a project. So then it would be the turn to the player to my left, and then his left or their left. And at the end of a cycle would be each player having played, then it's time for a response from the oppressive forces. So we are currently in phase 1. Recognized by the little number at the corner, which means that at the end of this cycle, 1 enclosure or one oppressive forces, reappears at the end of the cycle. So then we read the condition, the new effect, and then it is my turn again, and I play, and then full cycle, and then response from this. So on mobilizing resources, let's imagine that this is my hand. This is the only card in my hand. Remix the Commons. This is a project, and I do want to put it down. So this project requires 1 blue, 1 red, and 2 yellows before it leaves my hand to be on the game table. So this is called a deployment. So how does that work? Resources also follow the same color code. We have 2 yellows here and 2 reds here. So to be able to accomplish on this, I would require 2 yellows, which are here, 1 red, which is here, but I'm missing a blue. Who here has a blue that they could lend me? My colleague here says, I have one. I'll mobilize it for you also. So mobilizing a resource means that you take your resources and you turn them 90 degrees like this. So these resources are now mobilized and are now unavailable for other people to mobilize. So they will stay like this for an entire cycle until it becomes my turn again. And at the beginning of my turn, I can renew my resources. So for the moment, these 2 get mobilized, and then the blue gets mobilized from my colleague. All the resources up here have been accounted for, and I'm allowed to deploy this onto the table. Once a project card is deployed onto the table, it will never again require resources to be able to act. So campaigning with a project doesn't cost anything anymore. Projects will be free to campaign however they like. This board setup permits us, because we have enough projects on the go, to start campaigning against enclosures. So here's an example of that. We are going to focus on, let's focus on Dogma, because we already referred to it. Dogma requires 4 blue influences, 3 red influences, 1 green, and 4 yellows to be able to be neutralized. So this refers to people, means, and willingness for mobilization. This more like tools for mobilization. These are means like wealth and so on, and these are ideas, knowledge, and so on. So this is that which Dogma has influence over, and our projects have the same. So Centro Vélo here, which is a bike co-op in Montreal, influences, let's say, people by 2, mobilizes 2 people, and influences the will to get mobilized by 1. And so we have Transform Map here, that is more green and yellow, and then we have the Global Resource Bank, which is a monster card, which a ton of wealth associated with it. So, assuming it's my turn, I check the phases. We are still in phase number 1, which gives each player the right to mobilize to campaign with 1 project per turn. So it's my turn. I can choose one of my projects to start mobilizing against a threat. So, although this is not the most strategic move considering the board, we will hypersimplify. I will choose to bring the Global Resource Bank to campaign against Dogma. So you can see that I've now added 1 on this target of 4, 2 on this target of 3. So I overshot the green, so they're extra now. That's okay, it's kind of lost. So we still require 3 blue, 1 red. The greens are finished. And 3 yellows. We will accumulate projects over time, and by the time all of these values have been reached, this card will be neutralized. Since it's my turn and I'm only allowed to campaign 1 project, I will not continue. So let's say it's the end of my turn. My neighbor will then take one of their projects and mobilize it onto this target. And so now we've completed the reds. We still require 2 yellows and 2 blues. So my neighbor has a card here. Well, this person's turn is finished. It's this person's turn. They have this card right here, which completes the blue. By now we're almost there. We still require only 1 yellow to be able to fully neutralize this card. And it's my turn again. So, well, in between this, there would have been another response from this. I'm skipping this because we're talking only about this. Transform Map can campaign against Dogma add its weight to this campaign, and now Dogma has been neutralized. So when a card is neutralized, it is placed in the discard when no longer has any effect, and then everybody gets their projects back. So Global Resource Bank was mine, Forum Social Mondial was to my neighbor, the Village Psychothérapeutique was to this person, and then Transform Map is mine. And we could continue working against the new enclosures, but at the end of every cycle a new one shows up, so the pressure is on. By the time we're in the second phase, we turn over 2 cards. So in this condition we are 1 card away from defeat. Actually, it's not accurate. This is a crisis card. This has an immediate negative effect, which is players cannot draw new cards because of a xenophobe. So this will go here for a turn. We are not allowed to draw cards, all of us together. At the end of the turn, this will get discarded. And then 2 more will show up. So that would be 5. If this one is an enclosure, we are defeated, and it is. So we would have lost. And same, by the time we are in the second phase, every player is allowed to mobilize 2 projects per turn. By the time we get to the third phase, it's 3 cards from this deck and 3 projects of our own. Phase 3 has particular rules to be able to, for the end game, which is kind of the boss phase. Read the booklet for more information, and do have fun with Cards in Common.